How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Drew Johnson. As always, be sure to go follow us on X at Dalton_Trigg. You can follow DJ at Coach Drew 33, and be sure to like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms, but especially YouTube and Apple Podcasts. We greatly appreciate it. The Mavs, they were looking for a 3-game win streak. They couldn't get it. They lost to the Houston Rockets on Halloween. It felt like a trick or treat kind of thing because it was so bad. You couldn't really believe it. Luka should have shown up as Luka for Halloween, and that would have been incredible. But he's he still hasn't gotten his stuff together. Um, but the Mavs, they got themselves in a hole. I mean, at one point in this game, they were down by 23 points, uh, and they climbed back to within. I think they got it to within 3 was the closest they got there toward the end of the fourth quarter, but they just couldn't complete the comeback. Mainly because Jalen Green for the Rockets hit some massive shots down the stretch, but if the Mavs didn't put themselves in that hole, they wouldn't have to worry about it. So they fall to 3-2 on the season. The Houston Rockets improved to 3-2 on the season. We're gonna start. We'll get into some of the team stat stuff and some really concerning things that the Mavs can fix, and it's mainly due to effort and just attention to detail kind of stuff. But I want to start with Luka, DJ, because you know he was the preseason MVP favorite this year, and he has been several years, since he came into the league. But it really felt like this was the year he was going to put it all together. And I'm not going to make any dramatic claims 5 games into the season because obviously he can turn it around, and the Mavs can win enough games to where he does end up winning MVP. But he is just not. He's not even the MVP on his own team right now.
No.
The MVP of the Mavs right now is Kyrie Irving through
Mm.
five games. And I don't know. I mean, I know he didn't play in preseason. I know he had the calf strain issue that he was dealing with, but still, I mean, Slovenia didn't make it to the Olympics, so he wasn't playing an extended period of time after the finals. He seems to be in good physical shape just from the eye test, but he's just not the same Luka right now. The vibes are off. He's getting frustrated every single trip down the floor. It's like I was watching that game last night, and for the first time, there's been a few times throughout his career I felt like this, but last night was probably the most disappointed I've been in Luka. Like he was infuriating me with how he was acting on the court. So he's got to get his act together. He is arguably the best player in the world, and he needs to act like it. He needs to perform like it. And when he doesn't have it, when he does not have it going, he needs to push through that so it doesn't, seep into his teammates. He needs to lift people up, and if his shot isn't going, he needs to, stop yapping at the refs, get back on defense, get other people involved. There was one point where he had taken like 12 or 13 shots to start the game, and Clay had one shot in that first half. That can't happen. So, as much as we love Luka, as great as Luka is, and as great as he will be throughout the rest of this season, he's got to get his act together, or the Mavs are going to have more disappointing nights like what we saw on Thursday night. So there's my rant to start this. What are your thoughts on Luka and how that game went for Dallas last night?
I mean, my thoughts echo a lot of yours, but he allows what happens to him, and he allows circumstances that he can't truly control to really negatively affect with how he carries himself on the floor. And like you said, it bleeds over into his teammates. And there was a time where you had Luka out there. Kyrie was not on the floor at the time. I don't know who was in for Kyrie, but he was not out there. And you could see him just, and I hate to say this, but you could just see him suck the energy out of everyone that was on the floor. And as a point guard, like just a point guard, that cannot happen. You've got to run that show. And Luka could be better than anyone else in the league at running said show, but he's got to get the psychological part of this game down. He needs to quit flying off the handle every time something negative happens, because you can't play that way. At least, I mean, you can play angry, but you can't play frustrated.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to look too much into it, but we're in a group chat with a bunch of other Mavs people, and we make observations and everything. And somebody pointed out that Clay seemed a little frustrated last night. Now, to be fair, Clay might just be frustrated that he missed 7 of his 9 3-point attempts. That could have been part of it. He ended up being 5 of 13 for the game, had 12 points on the night, hit a couple of huge threes in that fourth quarter. But, maybe not all the frustration would have been about how Luka was acting out there, or his struggles shooting the ball, but it could have had something to do with it. I mean, we've seen Clay get agitated before in Golden State when things weren't going exactly how they needed to be. So that's stuff you need to keep an eye on too. And like I said, as the leader of the team, you gotta suck it up, and you gotta keep guys on schedule. And that's where we're at with Luka. And again, I'm not like pressing a panic button or trying to do anything or say anything outlandish, but he's got to get it together soon, because the Mavs have started out every season, it seems like, slower than they should. This team should be, and I'm sure there's a lot of teams saying this too, but this team should be 5-0 right now,
Mm-hmm.
going into this next game against Orlando, and they're not. And going and just to be clear here, Luka, as much as we're disappointed in his how he was acting on the court, he finished with 29 points, 5 rebounds, and shot 12 of 25 from the field. He was 3 of 7 from 3. 2 assists, DJ. 2 assists for Luka. Like, how crazy is that?
I think that he's still on some level out of sync with his teammates because he didn't play in the preseason. I think that is still affecting him. I mean, I really thought that he would get the feel back of everything sooner, but I just, a performance like that, I mean, give Houston some credit. They did a really good job of utilizing their athletes, specifically guarding off ball, which made it very difficult to find anybody for anything. And the Mavs just didn't move enough to get open as far as getting like open looks on the perimeter, which is a lot of what Luka's assists come from, are perimeter kickouts or lobs to Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford. And really, Houston utilized their athleticism well enough to take away both of those things pretty effectively. So if there's one thing that team has, it's elite level athletes. But still, there's no excuse for what happened last night. I also think that, that low assist total, I don't want to say it's completely, about Luka being selfish. I don't want to say it's that, but I do think that Luka can be a bit brash and make very rash decisions whenever he gets pissed off.
Yeah.
And whenever you're the coach on the floor, whenever you're the undisputed leader of your team, you got to hold yourself to a higher standard. Like, you can't hold your teammates to a standard until you hold yourself to that same standard.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, he's just trying to force things so much now because he knows he's struggling. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'd have to look at the let's see, Basketball Reference hasn't updated, for it being the 5th game of the season yet, but through 4 games, he was shooting 36.4% from the field, 26.8% from 3. That's awful. So, he's forcing it, and he's trying to shoot his way through this slump, and it's just not happening right now. So, it's been good enough for the Mavs to get 3 wins in 5 games because they have, a lot more talent around him. But, he's got to break out of this funk here pretty soon, or it's going to be very disappointing because this team has championship aspirations, especially coming off the year that they had last year. And, they added some key pieces, some pieces we thought would help put them over the top. So everybody's got to continue to gel, but Luka is the straw that stirs the drink, and he has to get his act together first, and then everything else will fall into line. So we'll see how it goes. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, and we've noticed it's a trend. The only game it didn't happen was in the Utah game. But every game except for the Utah game so far, the Mavs have been trailing after the first quarter. They're getting off to slow starts. I remember, I don't know if you saw it because I think you may have missed the first quarter or part of the first quarter getting back. But uh, from the very first possession, defensive possession, Luka didn't chase hard after Jalen Green, and Jalen Green got essentially a wide open 3-pointer that was it wasn't really. I mean, he was chasing a little bit, but it wasn't really contested. He could have done better on it. And Houston hit the first 3 of the game. They actually hit 2 threes to start the game, went up 6-0. And at that point, that was the start of the bad vibes for me because they just, and it wasn't just Luka. The team just didn't seem really engaged. It's not really all their fault because I've been of the opinion that Jason Kidd needs to tweak this starting lineup. There's not enough defense overall. You need to better distribute things. I feel like, Lively should be starting at center. I feel like, at some point, Clay should probably come off the bench. He was much more effective off the bench for Golden State last year than he was starting. Now, I understand, they've reportedly promised him a starting position, but everything I've heard from Clay, says that he just wants to win and he wants to win at a high level. So if you're getting the same amount of minutes, you're just coming off the bench to help better balance things and get off to better starts. I can't help but wonder if Jason Kidd just tweaking that starting lineup can help. Or is it just a matter of those guys getting their acts together and playing with higher energy? What do you think?
There's just to address the Clay thing, there's often a very vast difference, or at least some difference, between what people say and what people actually feel. I think that if you take Clay Thompson out of the starting lineup, you lose Clay. Mentally, I think you do.
Really?
Yes, because that was
Even in a new situation.
I think that was one of the main reasons he wanted out of Golden State was because he felt disrespected coming off the bench. And you essentially just go to the Dallas Mavericks to be put in a similar role that you wanted out of in Golden State. So I don't know. I'm not a mind reader, but that's what I would suspect. Just kind of playing devil's advocate there. I agree. Honestly, I think that you can win with Clay in your starting lineup, though. I really do. I don't think that there is a better pure shooter on the team. I think that last night wasn't a great performance, but other than that, the guy was averaging 19 points a game or something like that.
I think it was down to like 17 going into last night, but still, I mean, he's been shooting the ball fairly well. He's been playing good defense, which
Yeah,
is something we were saying like he's not. I know people were doubting him, but he still has something in the tank defensively. He's made some really good defensive plays. So, I mean,
yeah.
I'm with you there.
I think I definitely think that bringing him off the bench I think that it would negatively impact things personally, especially considering that he's not even a liability on either end of the floor, just starting. In
Yeah.
fact, I think that he helps us a lot whenever he's on the floor. So I'm not in favor of bringing Clay off the bench unless somebody emerges. Who would you have in mind starting in front of him?
It depends on who gets their act together shooting the ball first, because I could see either of Quentin Grimes or Najee Marshall, eventually being thrust into that starting three spot. But right now, right now, none of those guys are shooting great. But I could definitely I tell you what, I like what I've seen out of Najee Marshall in transition. And
Mhm.
when things get kind of hectic, chaotic, he that's when he's best utilized, in my opinion. So I like him in a chaotic, frantic, get the ball. Kyrie gets the ball, pushes the fast break. You have been saying for a long time he's the best you've ever seen in transition, and Najee Marshall can run right there with him, and they can make stuff happen in transition. So
Yeah. They
I,
play very well together, Marshall and Irving. Those two actually have some pretty immediate chemistry. Um, Definitely need to be pairing those two in as many lineups as possible because those guys, they just have something about them. They just match up very well in a lineup. So
But again, and I mean, I agree with you. I think it can work with Clay and keeping Clay in the starting lineup. I do, however, think that Lively is going to have to start eventually. Gafford is very good. He is very good. He can block shots, but he's not the overall defender that Lively is.
no,
Lively can defend in space better. He can get out on the perimeter if he needs to and do a decent job on guys. That's something that Gafford kind of struggles with. And I think you could have Gafford come in as like a bundle of energy kind of guy, and not have to guard guys like Sengun for the Rockets last night. I think you could have him come off the bench and play against bench guys and bring that energy in there, and he would be more effective in that role. And then you have the defensive impact of having Lively in the starting lineup. And then look, obviously, again, everything starts with Luka. He's the head of the snake. He's the guy that has to bring the high energy night in, night out on both ends of the floor. When he started out that game against the Rockets last night, giving up that three, I knew it was going to probably be a long night because it didn't seem like his mind was right from the very beginning. So, and they still almost won. They still almost won it. They almost came back and won the game, but you should never be down 23 to the Rockets at home anyway.
no,
So,
especially in the
very,
Rockets.
yeah, very
Yeah,
disappointing. But
yeah.
all right, we're going to pay a few bills here, and we will be right back on the other side. And we're going to talk about the Mavs rebounding issues because, talking about losing to the Rockets at home and being down by 23, they definitely shouldn't be getting killed on the boards by the Houston Rockets. So, especially when you have Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. So, we'll be back on the other side of this.
There is a
What's up, y'all? We're taking a quick break to tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Want to play Prize Picks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code STEPBACK to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code STEPBACK on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Drewski, sorry for cutting you off there. I hit the button too quick, but
stop calling me that.
uh, but we're going to talk about the rebounding issues now because, like I said, yes, that Rockets team has a bunch of athletes. They're very athletic. They get after the boards. They crash really hard. Uh, but you should never be losing a rebounding battle 50-37. Like that's insane to me, especially when you have Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, um, there was a point like now, given a lot of that has to do with those guys getting in foul trouble. I'm pretty sure both Lively and Gafford had 3 fouls each going into halftime,
Hmm.
which, put them back. So, um, you look at all that. Dwight Powell ended up playing last night, which lets
That's
you
not your
know,
problem.
hey, now look, to give Dwight Powell some credit, he did okay.
No, no, it actually wasn't. So, I mean, the main issue is, well, actually, I wouldn't even call it the main issue because this was happening with Lively and Gafford on the floor. Um, the main issue is it actually all starts from the beginning of the defensive possession. Whenever they first attack one of our guards on the perimeter, usually off the dribble, because this is Houston we're talking about, and traditionally they're not really a great 3-point shooting team. I mean, I don't think they even shot it well last night. A lot of what they got, I'm just curious. Well, how many second chance points did we have?
Let's see. So we gave up 18 offensive boards.
Yeah.
And let's see, 18 offensive boards. I see the points off turnovers, but I don't see the second chance points. But anyway,
Well,
18 offensive boards is ridiculous.
we can also see that they shot 23% from three and only 41% from the field. So what that tells me is these guys aren't scoring on offensive possessions. They're scoring on second chance opportunities.
Several times.
Oh, well, double digit times.
Yeah.
Probably 12, 14 times. I wouldn't say they probably scored all 18 opportunities, but it was almost all of them because they were all right at the rim. And I'll tell you why. It's because whenever they attack down or whenever they get downhill and they attack somebody on the perimeter, generally it being Luka, I hate to say it, they get by him. What is the defensive reaction from that? The backside help has to step up. Our rim protector has to step up. You know
Yeah.
what happens when the rim protector steps up? Usually it's above the area where he needs to be as far as rebounding is concerned.
Yeah.
So when that happens, they'll usually either, try to shoot it up with our guy trying to contest. And because there's no one back there, so see, someone's supposed to rotate down whenever that happens. It's just how, if I had a whiteboard on me, I'd show you. But someone is supposed to be rotating down. Nobody was rotating down. Nobody was rotating down on the backside. So the issue you have is you have your best rebounder on the floor completely out of play for a rebound. And that allows them, who are already hyper athletic, they're great athletes on that team, and they crash everybody. I think they only have one person getting back, maybe two. They're crashing at least 3 people every single possession. And our guys just couldn't handle it.
Which is a problem we saw in the NBA Finals against the Celtics. Drew Holiday and Derek White killed the Mavs. As good as Jaylen Brown was in that series, Tatum, he wasn't that good. But
Hey, respect. Tatum's actually playing pretty decent right now.
he's doing good now. Yeah. He's got like a chip on his shoulder. He's come out with a fire under him. But in the finals, it was definitely Jaylen Brown, who was their MVP. And really, you could have made a case for Drew Holiday and Derek White being like co-MVPs because of how many times they got offensive rebounds from Mavs players that should have gotten it, but they just weren't. They either weren't in the right position or they weren't paying attention or close attention to detail as those players were, and it resulted in extra points for the Celtics. And we saw those issues come up against the Rockets last night. So hopefully this is just like an early season ironing out the kinks kind of thing for the Mavs. And, as we get closer to the end of the calendar year, hopefully they can be a more well-oiled machine because these issues they're having seem very fixable. It's not a personnel thing. I mean, they've definitely got the personnel. This is an effort thing. This is a coming prepared from the opening tip kind of thing. Even if Luka's missing shots, if he just sticks with it last night and, make sure you get back every time, you don't have to argue with the ref. Because, I mean, look, arguing with the refs does nothing. And I get it. It's very, very hard for him to to keep from doing that. But he's got to understand that he's not going to change the outcome. If he doesn't get a foul call, saying something to that ref is not going to make him change his mind. It's over with. The play's over. And that ref will have more respect for you down the line if you just roll with it and, don't berate him every time every time something happens. He'll have more respect, and Luka might get more calls if he plays it that way. So, he's got to, if the shot's not falling, he needs to stop forcing it. He needs to drive more. Right now, Kyrie Irving, it feels like, is driving more to the rim than Luka is.
Yep.
So he's got to fix that and find different ways to get it done if that shot isn't falling, because he can't keep starting off these games, 1 of 8 or 1 of 9, and getting his team in a hole. We gotta do something different here. So, last thing we're going to talk about before we get out of here for the weekend, PJ Washington. He did not have a great offensive game last night, but he hit 3 of his 6 shots he attempted, had 6 points, but man, defensively, he was great. He had 9 rebounds. He led the Mavs. He led the entire team with 9 rebounds, had 3 steals and 3 blocks. Like, the way PJ Washington played defense last night made me think, like, this guy could be an all NBA team defender, first or second team, probably second team defender, if he brings that on a nightly basis. He's definitely capable. The problem is the rest of his teammates didn't bring that same intensity. But one thing I really liked about PJ, not just his individual play, but when Lively and Gafford got in foul trouble, Kidd decided to, and it was after he gave Powell a little bit of run at center, and then he was like, you know what, we probably need to do something different down the stretch. He put PJ in as the 5, the small ball. Well, small ball. You still had Luka Doncic and Najee Marshall out there. So it's not really like a Rick Carlisle small ball lineup back in the days, but PJ at the 5, I really liked what I saw out of that lineup. Like, later on this season, like, especially when you play, say, the Celtics, for example, and you need shooting at every single position, and a guy at the 5 like PJ, he might not be as tall as Lively or Gafford, but he's still long and he can block shots and everything. I love what I saw out of him at the 5. So what did you think about that?
No, he is incredibly versatile defensively. If his shot ever starts going down, he's going to be an all-star. Because he is so versatile defensively. And the reason that small ball lineup worked so well against Houston is because Houston is chock full of athletes, right? And so to be effective against a team like that, or to be able to guard them effectively, rather, you need to be able to move with them. And that was, again, a lot of our issue on the glass, is we just weren't mobile enough. But I got to say, whenever we were in small ball, I thought we rebounded the ball better.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
pretty sure we did.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
you know, it's definitely on a matchup basis. Like, you don't want to go with a small ball lineup against someone with, like, let's say the Bucks with Giannis. I wouldn't go small ball with Giannis.
Yeah. Or like Joel Embiid when he's healthy.
Right. Or Nikola Jokic, for instance. Like, whenever
yeah,
you have dominant big players, you've got to be able to counter that.
Yeah, and Sengun, he's very good. He's very, very skilled, big, but he's not one of those real. You don't think of him as like a super physical back to the basket type, and he can post, but he has a lot of finesse to his game. There were several times last night where he had those little mid paint floaters and stuff. So when you have a guy like that, I think you can get away with it, and we saw that. PJ Washington did an excellent job on Sengun. So you don't want to do it against Joel Embiid when he's healthy, but I think there are definitely times where we will see that throughout the rest of this season. But I love what I saw out of PJ Washington. That guy, after he's shooting the ball a little bit, the 3 ball isn't there yet, but his overall efficiency has been better the last few games. After he started out, like, I think the first game he was 2 of 10, and then the next game 4 of 11 or something like that. So he's picked it up a little bit with that. The volume isn't there, but defensively, I love what I've seen out of PJ, and I think that's going to continue to improve as we progress through this season. So now the Mavs will have to rinse this one away. They still have 4 more games left on this homestand. Obviously, you would have loved to have started it out with a win, but now they have a few extra days off. The next game is Sunday. They play the Orlando Magic, who will be without Paolo Banchero, who we just gave flowers to on the last pod because he had started out this season unbelievably for Orlando. He tore an oblique, so he's out from, I think the report was 4 to 6 weeks now. So the Mavs, I mean, obviously we wish the best for Banchero and hope he heals quickly, but the Mavs are kind of catching a break here too, because he's like Luka is for the Mavs, Banchero is for the Magic. He makes everything go for them. So it'll be interesting to see, if the Mavs bring the proper respect to that matchup to bounce back the way that, because look, sometimes playing an undermanned team can be dangerous. We saw it several times when Rick Carlisle was the coach and he had the undermanned team. He could win any game on any given night with JJ Barea starting. Well, the Mavs will definitely have to have the proper level of respect for Orlando to get back in the win column. But guys, look, we appreciate y'all coming in and listening to us ramble a little bit. As always, the Mavs, it's been a up and down start to the season so far. But like I said earlier, I mean, none of these issues are major issues. This is stuff that can be fixed fairly easily, with a few guys giving more attention to detail and the overall energy level being picked up a few notches. So we appreciate it. Y'all go like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and Apple Podcasts especially. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts for a chance to win future giveaways. We just gave away a couple of T-shirts a few weeks ago, and we will likely be doing another one of those sometime around Thanksgiving, I believe it is. So be sure to go do that. Appreciate it, y'all. Y'all have a good one. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.